Firstly, hey everyone, my name is Graeme Barnes. I'm a product manager on Gnosis' side product, which is a regulated prediction market, and now helping with adoption of conditional tokens through finding new and novel use cases. My presentation is going to be about potential new governance tools, which leverage prediction markets to aid decision-making of DAOs. So what's in store for today? Well, first off, some user insights based on running a prediction market. Noticed that we didn't quite think what's going to happen or predict. How it could work for DeFi, like an application in DeFi. And then finally, just some of the work that we have going on in progress. By the way, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump in. Cool. And speaking of questions, just before kind of getting to the meat of this presentation, I really want to base it in, what are the big questions that we have for our industry? So I find myself constantly asking questions like this, and perhaps you do too, but it's questions of what should we build? Will our work mean anything? Will it be hacked? Will it be used? Will we be sued? And I think most importantly, will it make a meaningful difference? So with these big questions in mind, it's my hope that in Ethereum and Ethereum itself can offer means or applications for us to answer these questions, not as an individual, but as something larger, being more than just one person. So with that in mind, I just want to describe the problem. And the problem that I see in governance at the moment is, unless you have a huge bag of a project's tokens, you don't have much incentive to care. I mean, why spend the time analyzing the potential effect of a governance proposal? Why think that hard if it's not really going to benefit you? And simply, I think we won't. And this problem is real. If you speak to any community managers or governance facilitators, they'll tell you two things that plague them. The first is lack of participation. As described above, it's just really difficult to get people to care. And it's way harder to get them to vote, especially if it involves some kind of gas fee or transaction. And the second one is noise. So fate would have this cruel circumstance that the more attention a vote does get, the harder it's going to be, or the more noise that vote is going to generate. And noise in the form of either spam or long posts, just tons of content, which makes it harder for a critical thinker to pass through all of those opinions and figure out what their own objective point is. So the two problems are kind of interlinked. So now I'm going to kind of go into the anecdotal data side of things. And a lot of this was derived from running the site beta. So it was this regulated prediction market, had a hell of a KYC process, and the beta was limited to $1,000 markets. And we ran roughly about 20 markets, a small group. And if you want to chat about how to regulate a DApp, I'd be more than happy to chat, but perhaps after the talk. But yeah, during this beta, noticed something interesting. So it first started when we had this MakerDAO market asking, what was the stability fee going to be at the mid-October? And the trading activity we noticed was like a sudden spike, taking the odds up to the high 70s. And then a few days later, taking the odds way up into the 90s. So basically, this one guy was incredibly confident that MakerDAO was not going to be raising the stability fee. I ended up speaking to him. I was like, well, why did you make that second trade? What changed? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I attended the MakerDAO governance call. And after the call, I was pretty confident that they were going to keep the stability fee or not raise it. And that was interesting because our prediction market, with only an AMA funded with $1,000 or AMM funded with $1,000, incentivized him enough to go attend a MakerDAO governance call, whereas without this market, he would have never done that. Then we ran another market, which was on Uniswap's volume and kind of predicting how much it was going to be by a specific date. And again, what we noticed was the trader actually went and investigated how Uniswap volume was reported on the website that we used as a resolution source. and found a bug in how they were reporting it and got that bug fixed. But again, it was like, wow, we incentivized this guy to really focus in so much about how Uniswap volume was reported that he found a bug and led to a bug fix. And basically, this is the trend that we saw, is that attention follows money. All of the traders that we spoke to, they would only make a trade once they'd done their own research. And there was a relationship between the amount that they bet versus the amount of research that they did. And simply put, yeah, you put money into a automated market maker around an interesting question, and people will do their own solid research to figure out what the likely consequence of, or what is the outcome going to be. And I think that's a superpower, being able to like incentivize that very serious and considered thought. So we've all heard about the attention economy, and applications are constantly competing for attention. But that attention, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, it's the kind of attention that is fast and it's quick and it's reactive rather. But what we've seen with, or at least in my limited experience with prediction markets, is that it elicits this like slow and thorough and in-depth attention. And to be specific, prediction markets where the question is specifically about governance in the cryptosphere. And you know, it makes sense that people would do that research. If you had to risk your hard-earned crypto, why wouldn't you do your best to make sure that the odds were in your favor? Yeah, so I just got a ping for examples. Examples regarding just in the chat. Yeah, it's my first time using the software. It's super smooth. So anyway, where was I? Prediction markets, essentially marketing for governance decisions for DAOs. And yeah, it just seems to solve the two problems with regards to lack of participation and noise. And I'm just going to be going through a brief example now. So the thing about prediction markets so far is that you can only ask kind of one question at a time. So for example, how much will Yearn.finance strategist fees change before 2021? And we can have, this is an example of a categorical market. It's either like ABC, or in this case, 0%, 0.5%, 1%. And that's cool. And here's another example of a simple prediction market. So on a range of 0 to 50, how many new Yearn vaults strategies will be deployed in the first quarter of 2021? And this is actually an example of a scalar market. It can give a bit more of a nuanced result. I'm not going to go too much into that, but Omen, one of the prediction markets operating on the conditional tokens framework, will have an example of a scalar market shortly. But the main point here is, yeah, you can only ask one question at a time. And what if there was a way that we could ask people to think seriously and deeply about these kind of something a bit more deeper, like a cause and effect relationship? And so this might be a little bit tricky to see. It was difficult to get the whole decision tree into one view, but essentially we've got the two questions that I just went through. So yeah, what are your strategist fees going to, or how much are they going to increase by before the end of 2020? 0%, 0.5, 1%. And then we've got a second question, which is on a range of 0 to 50, how many new strategies are going to be deployed in the first quarter of 2021? And what essentially we have here on the second row, where we have 6 outcomes, is basically combinations between those different events. So we've got, there will be a 0% increase, and there will be then 0 new strategies deployed. And then we've got, there will be 0% increase, and there will be 50 deployed strategies. And this is all, yeah, okay, awesome. But you might be asking yourself, well, if you've got these two outcomes represented by one token, how can you have conditional logic, in this case, like the AND operator? How can you have that inside of one token? And that's really the magic of the conditional tokens framework, that you can add conditional logic inside of one token. And I'm not going to get into a super amount of details exactly how that's facilitated. The highlight is some very advanced math. But there is more examples and great tutorials on the Gnosis conditional token framework docs page. And my colleague Oren is giving a whole presentation specifically on the framework. But the takeaway is that this framework allows people to ask these if this, then that questions, which is something new. So the UX, now this is something that was designed in 2009 by Michel Bayo. And what you see is it takes the user through this journey of having to think through this cause and effect decision. So the first one is an event. In this case, it was, will Ethereum 2.0 beacon chain go live before a specific date? And then you say, yeah, I think that's going to happen. And then, okay, cool. And then if you think that happens, then do you think Ethereum's market cap is going to be greater than Bitcoin's? And essentially allows the user to put a bet on that. And then the market maker will give them a return. And under the hood, what's happening with the tokens is essentially collaterals going in, and it's being used to produce these conditional tokens backed by that initial collateral, in this case USDC. And what we'll see here is that the user will have the condition that he thought that he actually bet on, and the market maker will keep the counter example. But something you might have noticed in the UI was that there was a refund option. You see there, so if no, so in this case, if that prior event doesn't come true, you get a refund. And that's a pretty awesome UX. And how it's facilitated is essentially the conditional tokens that represent, in this case, 0% increase in strategist fee or 0.5% increase in strategist fee. Those conditional tokens are given to the user so that they can then redeem that for collateral in the case of that their event that they bet on doesn't happen. And the market maker is clever enough to issue those tokens in a way that they will be redeemable for the exact amount that they put in. But yeah, where does this leave us with DeFi as something new? And essentially, currently, we've got this thing of farming and dumping. And it's great. It's an awesome way to get a ton of liquidity in your protocol super quickly. There's a lot of publicity as well. But ultimately, people are dumping the tokens, and then they're going on the free market and they're becoming a speculative asset. It's almost like the governance community gets hollowed out after a certain point. And what we want, or what I believe we want, is DAOs that have a very strong community of people who are very much engaged in the decisions and have to think really deeply and care about the decisions without them necessarily being large whales. And yeah, so I think there's a better way. And I think that better way is using conditional tokens to facilitate these prediction markets that ask basically about the consequence to a governance decision being implemented or not. And so this example that I have here, we've kind of been through with the collateral. But in this example, yeah, imagine Yearn sets up a prediction market asking basically, and this is a real debate happening right now, is should we increase our strategist fees? And if we do, what is the effect going to be? How many more strategies are we going to see launching on Yearn? And they can ask that question using the setup. But what if they wanted to get the people who were correct, the people that made the right forecast and had the right insight, if they wanted those people to become a part of the Yearn community, instead of relying on them to either buy the token Wi-Fi, what they can do is they can essentially send the bettor a conditional token that is the same as the condition that they bet on, except this one is backed by Wi-Fi in the correct proportion. It basically means is that if they are right, they're going to get Wi-Fi and they're going to get more stake in Yearn and more ability to affect outcomes and decisions in the DAO. And hopefully that leads to a smarter DAO, because you're going to have more people who are thinking more seriously about it and then becoming owners in that DAO themselves, if they're correct. And you might say, well, surely they would then just sell the Wi-Fi and dump it on the market. And yeah, that could happen, and it probably would under certain circumstances. But I believe that, and well, I think that tokens that are earned by being correct about something are going to attribute the endowment effect. That basically means that because you earned it, because you were right about it, you're likely to value it more than on the free market. And I think just generally this feeling of like, I was right, and now I have got more of a role to play in this community will hopefully take hold and take effect. But with that said, there's still some big open questions about this area of governance. And the first one is like, what are the best suited questions? So what I just mentioned with Yearn could be a good result. It's got like nice on-chain data, which is always awesome, so we can decentralize the whole thing. But what are the best suited questions for these kind of if this then that prediction markets? And the second one is, what is the relationship between the amount of liquidity and the amount of attention? Is it a straight line? When does it get like diminishing returns? And then this kind of links into the liquidity. When can you have too much liquidity? That you actually start incentivizing people to change their behavior based on a prediction market existing and being very well funded. When do you start creating things that are actually more like self-fulfilling prophecies than they are prediction markets? And when do the markets actually start interfering in the governance as opposed to attracting attention for that governance decision? So it's an interesting concept, but I'd like to kind of see it stand on its own legs. And I imagine your protocol getting very serious attention from anyone in our industry or anyone in the Ethereum community. And imagine being able to profit through your informed opinion and actually like earn a living by contributing to DAOs, by just thinking really seriously about a decision that they're about to undertake. And I don't quite know how this could exist on its own feet, but I understand the why. And if you're interested in talking about this concept further, please ping me. I'd love to chat about a bit more. But otherwise, what's going on right now is we've got the Aragon Futarchy DAO. So this is a GECO Grants participant who's working to integrate this concept into Aragon DAOs. We've got pre-gov, which works somewhat differently, but it's a really interesting concept that allows or generates a prediction for governance decisions impact on that project's token price. We've got the HG demo, which was the OG demo done by Alan way back in the day, and it allows people to do basically select their own very nuanced and complex positions. We've got Omen, which is live at the moment, which is a prediction market with reality.io and Kleros as the source of resolution. We've got the Conditional Tokens Explorer coming out, which allows anyone to create these conditions and perform the operations that are kind of drew on that decision tree, as we call them, splitting and merging. But a nice GUI interface to do all of that, as well as to wrap an ERC1155 to ERC20 wrapper. And then finally, we are working on adapters, which is basically taking on-chain data and allowing it to resolve a conditional token. So basically, decentralized oracles. And if you're interested in any of this, or if you're interested in any kind of use case and building on it, I'd love to chat with you. We've got 2 grants on the way, likely to start a third soon. But if you would like to pursue this concept that I just chatted about, or if you have got some other idea for a use case for conditional tokens, let me know. I'd love to work with you and love to kind of bring these ideas and use cases into life. So that was my presentation. I hope it was interesting and leads to more questions and more experimentation.